This week on the Communicators, a discussion on the attempt by Democrats to move the date of the transition to digital television. Our guest is Representative Joe Barton, the ranking member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee.
Congressman Joe Barton is the ranking member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, and that is the committee that deals with a lot of telecommunications issues. He's our guest this week on the Communicators. Here to question him, Ann Veigle of Communications Daily, who is the Associate Managing Editor. Congressman Barton, given the fact that your committee just canceled a vote on delaying the digital transition, do you see that it will be happening and moving from February to June?
Oh, I don't want it to be delayed. I think in full disclosure, you and your audience need to know that I was chairman when we put in the hard date for the transition, and it was not done just kind of serendipitously. It was done with intent. The original Telecommunications Act back in 1996 gave kind of a rolling transition when a certain percentage of the American households could receive digital television. I think it was 90%, something like that. Then you would have the transition, which meant you would have never happened.
Right.
You know, and so when I became chairman of the committee in 2003 or 2004, I went to former Chairman Veigle and said we need to work together and get a hard date. And I wanted an earlier date, but we agreed. Chairman Veigle and subcommittee ranking member Markey, said we need to make sure that you get through the presidential election in 2008, then you need to make sure you get through the Super Bowl. And so we picked the middle of February, it turned out February 17th, as a hard date, and it was done in conjunction with the industry and the stakeholders, so there's enough lead time so the TV stations could get their digital transmission in gear and all of that. Long story short, we're about a month away from that. 97% of American families know that it's coming. 93% of every household that has a television set is totally ready for it. We think, based on coupon redemption, that there are about 800,000 households, maybe, that are not prepared. 800,000. And if you do the math on the total number of television households, that's significantly less than 1%. So the question is, if 99.5% of America is ready, why do you delay something? And so when Mr. Waxman told me that the Obama transition team had asked there be a delay, I said I wouldn't do that. And we were prepared to offer a number of amendments at the markup that has been postponed or canceled. And Chairman Waxman talked to me and said maybe we could still do something that wouldn't require a delay. So that's where we are. Staffs are working right now on the House side to see if we couldn't yet come together with something so that you don't have to do a delay. And the simple fix is to just change the accounting rules. Just say, instead of requiring 100% of every coupon that's issued to be money set aside for, use some redemption rate percentage, and they're actually being redeemed about 52%. So if you went to a 65% redemption rate, you wouldn't have a problem. I mean, this is an accounting problem. It is not a true inability to issue the coupons for the converter box problem.
Do you see an agreement shaping up? Because it looks like from the statement that Mr. Waxman put out yesterday that he was concerned about the opposition from Senate Republicans, and that's why he was pulling back. But do you think it's more that he's decided he wants to compromise and get the accounting rules changed?
I can only refer to the conversation I've had with Chairman Waxman. I think he's sincere that he wants to solve the problem. I think the Obama transition team was sincere. I just don't think they knew enough to know what the problem was. Yeah. But again, let me just, we set aside $1.5 billion for the transition, and we have already issued enough coupons that have been redeemed that we know that in the mid 90% of the households are ready to go. And the only households that are really going to have a problem on transition day are the over-the-air households that don't have satellite or cable. And based on coupon redemption, since when you send the coupon out, you know where the household is, you know what kind of TV situation they have. There are not more than 800,000 households that have not yet done anything. And you know, take 800,000 times $40 a coupon box, or $80. That's about $64 million. And you've got the money sitting in the Treasury, but it's frozen because coupons have not been redeemed. So if you fix that, then you don't have to do anything. Just target those 800,000 households and say, folks, you've got a month. Get your coupon.
So, Congressman, are you saying that it would not require extra funds to keep the date and just change the accounting rules?
Yeah, it doesn't require a penny.
But is it possible to get that? You need legislation to change the accounting rules, right? Do you think it's realistic in the next 2 weeks to get that done, given all the work being done on the stimulus? And,
well, the way the Democrats run the House and the Senate, if Republicans agree to unanimous consent, we could do it tomorrow afternoon.
Do you think President Obama would sign such legislation?
Sure. I mean, I take President Obama at his word that he's about solutions. And I mean, their transition team, as far as we can tell, the first I don't know, I can't speak for the Senate side, but on the House side, the first any of my Democrat friends knew about this delay was when they got the letter asking for the delay. There wasn't this back and forth, what do you think we ought to do? And Mr. Markey, who was the former subcommittee chairman of the telecommunications subcommittee, now he's switched over to the energy subcommittee. Mr. Boucher is a subcommittee chairman now in the House, but Mr. Markey and my staff and his staff were working on an accounting fix until they got the transition letter saying put in the delay. The stimulus package that we're working on, that the Democrats have put forward, has $650 million in additional funding for the transition. You know, it's a pot of money looking for a problem.
Well, I was wondering. That was my next question. Is what is that for? It's just sitting as a line in the bill without any explanation of how to use it or where.
Whoever put the bill together, that sounded like a big number. You know, but again, we appropriated, and there is in an account in the Treasury sufficient money that's already there for all these converter box redemptions that are yet to be done. We don't need additional money. Now, if my friends on the Democratic side want to throw money at a problem, and the way they're throwing money around, $650 million isn't all that much, fine. But you don't need $650 million for converter boxes. It costs $40 to $80 a box.
What have you heard from industries? Verizon, AT&T have both said yes, they could deal with the delay, but what else have you heard from broadcasters or other industries that would be affected by this?
Well, it depends on if you mean on the record or off the record, but off the record, nobody wants it to be delayed. Everybody's ready to go. But on the record, they don't want to be the skunk at the garden party here in the new Obama era, with a new FCC chairman coming in and a new FCC majority. So they're all, you know, basically what they're saying on the record is they're not opposed to the delay. There are very few people that have been on the record saying they want the delay, and almost everybody off the record is saying we'd rather not have the delay. I mean, if you have a delay, you don't free up the spectrum, so you don't get the first responders. The folks that bid in the auction have already spent $20 billion. They're not getting any return on their capital if they can't start putting in these new systems. The broadcasters have their towers up and running. Several of the smaller power stations in some of the smaller markets have already converted. They've already gone to digital. There's been no public outroar in those markets. And admittedly, they're not the big major markets, but there's been no uproar in congressional offices or the senatorial offices. Oh my gosh, my TV, I got up this morning and it didn't work. And we agreed a couple of weeks ago to a unanimous consent bill, Senator Rockefeller in the Senate, that you know, once the transition occurs, if you haven't converted, you will broadcast a signal that says the reason you're not getting a TV picture is that we're broadcasting in digital now, and you need to get a converter box.
What would you say is the reason all of a sudden there seemed to be very bipartisan, solid consensus on this date, and then all of a sudden in the last month, prompted in part by the large numbers of people on the waiting list for coupons who can't get them, you well described the reason. But do you think that NTIA or the contract could have been written better in a way that could have? Human behavior is such that people wait till the last minute anyway.
I'm a real living example of somebody. I'm the guy who moved the bill. I haven't asked for coupons yet.
So you're a last minute procrastinator too?
I'm one of these guys that I'm gonna wake up the day of and say, didn't get my coupon. But I'm also not going to blame the government. I'm not going to call my congressman and say, can I speak to Congressman Barton? This is Congressman Barton. Congressman Barton, are you the guy who did that? Yes, I am. Well, why didn't you get your converter box? Well, I've been too busy. I mean, you know, I'm not going to do that. But it's just one of these deals that average people who haven't really looked at the issues see these waiting lists. And we could have changed, if we had known then what we know now, we would have had some kick-out provisions. As far as I'm concerned, and I told this to Mr. Markey informally, let people go to Best Buy or Circuit City before they go out of business and get the converter box, send the receipt to the Treasury. How much fraud can there be in a $40 or $50 converter box program at the last minute? You know, and then it's kind of like a proof of, you know, the old cereal proof of purchase. If you buy a box of Rice Krispies and you send in the proof of purchase, Kellogg's would send you a prize or something. Do that. You know, send us in the receipt and the something from the boxes, so you actually bought it, and you won't need a coupon. You could do that.
But Congressman Barton, doesn't it become a political problem when somebody wakes up and their TV doesn't work on February 18th?
Well, since almost everybody in the country knows it's coming, you only have yourself to blame. Now, there are going to be some senior citizens and some disabled Americans that perhaps don't realize it, but you know, you're going to have that no matter what. I mean, there's going to be a certain small percentage. I was supposed to go vote today and I forgot to. Now, whose fault is that I didn't go vote? But that's not a reason. If you're 99% ready to go, you don't delay because of the 1% who either is not focused on it or perhaps is so incapacitated that regardless of when you do it, they won't be able to comply.
Final question on the digital transition. Are you, looking back now, would you change how you set up the legislation knowing what you know now? And are you satisfied with the management that NTIA, Commerce Department, FCC have provided?
I'm satisfied with the overall management of the program. I do wish we had had a kick-out provision. You know, we may not have, you know, we didn't want people to game the system, and we tried to prevent fraud, so that's why we had the coupon, and we didn't want to just give money to people who put it in their pocket and then not buy the converter box and things like that. And so we've been successful in that, but we really didn't think through about the end game, and we should have had some provision on redemption rates and some ability at the end to provide additional coupons or something. And although I don't think we need any more money, it might have been prudent to put a contingency fund that you could draw on if necessary, so you didn't have to do another legislative fix. The problem we have right now in a transition between different political majorities, and we knew that we wanted to do it after the presidential election, we should have provided some mechanism for different political parties to alleviate these kind of last-minute problems. So sure, in hindsight, we would have done things a little bit differently.
Ann Veigle, new topic.
Well, I wanted to shift over to the bill that you're marking up this morning in your committee, and specifically the broadband grant section of that, which is large and seems to be divided between creating a new program at Commerce Department's and TIA for broadband grants, and then there's also an existing program at the Agriculture Department Rural Utilities Service. And I just wonder if you could explain to me how those two are different and how people or providers or that want to get into this business would know which one to go to. It just seems like there's a lot of money.
Well, first of all, you shouldn't have two programs. I mean, I guess the first assumption is, do you need a federal broadband deployment policy at all for rural America? I mean, people make choices. If you choose to live in downtown New York City, there's enough critical mass and infrastructure, whatever the latest technology is, there's going to be probably available. If you choose to live outside of Alpine, Texas, with the average density is one person every 10 square miles, less likely you're going to have the latest technology automatically deployable because there's not enough market concentration there to alleviate the capital cost. We made a decision in the 1930s that every American had the right to a telephone. That created the Universal Service Fund and the rural telephone and all that stuff. And we're now asserting that everybody has a right to broadband. Well, I think broadband is a great thing, but I'm not sure that it should be federal policy to guarantee deployment to the folks that live on the ranches outside of Alpine, Texas. But if you assume that you should have such a federal policy,
seems to be the direction we're going.
Yeah, it's not the direction I want us to
Right.
go. I don't think you need two programs. So what you've got is you've got the Commerce Department, where we've done traditionally most of these programs, and then you've got the Agricultural Department, and they've got a lot of farm-based agricultural commodity programs, and now they want a piece of this new technology pie. So you've got different bureaucracies, different stakeholders, each one a little bit part of this, and we're about to throw, I think, $8 billion at something that, again, it's not a bad thing to give Americans access to broadband, but as wireless technology develops, I think fairly soon, through the satellite wireless systems, you wouldn't need some sort of a government subsidized broadband deployment, in my opinion.
I wanted to ask you about the open access language in the stimulus bill, at least on the House side. It seems to be making some companies nervous that fear it might inhibit their business plans, while others are saying now's the time for the net neutrality opportunity. Do you see that coming up in the markup today?
It's in the bill.
It's in the bill, but do you see a discussion about that, or is it going to be overridden?
Could you briefly explain also what you mean by open access?
You
Well,
can explain that.
the internet, in the internet age, there's most of the internet has been deployed by private sector companies who invested billions and billions of dollars to put in the fiber optic networks and all of that. They obviously don't make any money if they're not people using their networks, but they feel like as their networks become crowded, if they're constrained in some way, that they reserve the right to manage the traffic on their private network. The open access group, the net neutrality group, says even though it's privately funded, privately owned, it's a common carrier, and there should be rules that guarantee access to everybody, regardless of the purpose, regardless of the volume of demand that they need. So you've got this classic debate. If it's a privately owned asset, do the people that own the asset have the right to manage it? If it's a common carrier and it's in the public domain, is there a guaranteed right to have access to it, regardless of your ability to pay or what you're going to use it for? And as people download these videos and this streaming and all this, the amount of space needed is growing exponentially. So we had the debate, 2 Congresses 2 years ago and the private capital ability to manage your asset won the debate. In other words, we didn't move a regulatory net neutrality piece of legislation. But in this Congress, and I guess it makes good politics, they're just doing it in the stimulus package up front, and it's what would have been a huge debate and a standalone issue is going to be at most a 10 or 15 minute debate in the committee today.
So you expect it to just pass?
Well, there are 23 Republicans and there are 36 Democrats, and with my friends on the Democratic side, I don't think they know what's in the bill either.
Yeah.
But they know President Obama's for it and Speaker Pelosi's for it, and they know which party label they have, and so they're going to hold their noses. Some of them are enthusiastic for it. I don't want to, I wish Mr. Markey or Mr. were here so you could hear their side too. But it will pass. It's not good public policy in my opinion. America is doing very well with current policy, and the more regulation, even though it says open access, it's a little bit of a misnomer. It really is regulated access, and over time it will, in my opinion, degrade the network.
Well, Congressman Barton, speak a little bit more about Democratic Congress, Democratic President, new Democratic chair of the FCC coming in. Senator Rockefeller is new on the Commerce Committee. Congressman Waxman is new as your chairman. Do you see further regulation, and what issues do you see coming up?
Well, that's why you need to have them on. They're the ones that call on the agenda. I'm the guy that's holding up the yield sign and saying, wait a minute, let's think about this a little bit. First of all, I think the American people have spoken. They elected President Obama overwhelmingly against Senator McCain. They've elected 30 more Democrats to the House. They elected 7 or 8 more Democrat senators to the Senate. So they obviously have a right to set the agenda. That's the way democracy is. It's incumbent on their majority now, the leadership, to use that power that people have given them responsibly. And I have a real question mark whether that's going to happen. President Obama is talking about inclusion. He wants to work with Republicans. Have we had any input into the stimulus package? No. So in the House, the majority in the Democrat caucus is left of center. I would call them liberals. They would call themselves progressives. This is their golden opportunity to revisit the New Deal from 1933. If they want to move the country significantly to the left, legislatively, people like myself can make them think about it, but we don't have the votes to stop them. And so they really have to look within their caucus, kind of a self-regulatory. Some of the conservative Democrats and the Blue Dog Democrats and the budgetary conscious Democrats need to be holding up some warning signs too. There's enough of a coalition between Democrats and Republicans, if it's allowed to come together in the House and the Senate. We can work with President Obama, and we can do things that need to be done, but we won't necessarily have to do everything that the liberal left has wanted to do for the last 60 years. So it's, but today this stimulus package, we don't even know what the score is, but we know it's over $150 billion. We're going to have a 6 to 8 hour debate. We're going to have 10 to 15 roll call votes, and on most of the roll call votes, it'll be all the Democrats voting against the Republican amendments. Now, we may win on a few of them, and we may withdraw a few, and Chairman Waxman is a new chairman, and he may decide that it's to his benefit to agree to some consensus amendments. But if he wants to play it right and down the partisan line, he's got 13 more votes than I've got.
There have been some changes that Mr. Waxman's made in terms of process on the committee. I was wondering how you're coping with that. I believe he's limited to some extent the length of opening statements at hearings. And
well, he changed the rules.
Yeah.
Our committee, the Energy and Commerce Committee, is the oldest standing authorizing committee in the House. It was mentioned in the Constitution under the Commerce Clause. It's the largest jurisdiction of authorization in the House. almost every major landmark bill that's been passed in the last 150 years has either originated in the Energy and Commerce Committee or had some input from the committee. So this is the preeminent authorizing committee, and every member, regardless of party, until this Congress, has had a guaranteed right at every hearing, at every markup, to give an opening statement. Now, if you're in the majority and you're helping put these bills together, you might not need to give an opening statement, but you might want to. If you're in the minority and have had no input at all, it's your only chance to really tell your constituency what you think about it. And Mr. Waxman changed the rules so it's now at the hearings, not at the markups. And a markup is when you actually amend a bill and vote it out. A hearing is where you have witnesses come to talk on the issue. At hearings now, it's at the discretion of the chairman whether there shall be an opening statement. And I vehemently oppose that. And what I have is Chairman Waxman's commitment that he's going to try to show leniency, but it is at his discretion now under the rules. If he doesn't want to allow opening statements other than himself and myself as the ranking Republican, under the rules, he's got that right. We've taken away one of the guaranteed rights of every member of the committee, and since there are more Democrats than Republicans, it's going to bind them more than it's going to bind us.
Did you see it as a dilution of the minority's free speach rights?
Yeah, well, it's a diminution of the majority's free speech rights too. But yes, yeah. I mean, it's just, opening statements to most people may be totally boring, but if you're chairman, and I used to be chairman, if you sit there and listen, it gives you an idea where your committee is. It tells you where whatever your majority is, where they're coming from, but it also tells you what's really concerning the minority. And a smart chairman listens to those opening statements and if accommodates the legislation so that everybody has a part of the action, so you get bipartisan consensus. Now, in the short term, you can be a dictator, but in the House and in the energy, it will not work over time. And I think Chairman Waxman, in the interest of expediency, made a huge mistake.
And finally, Congressman Barton, a lot of management and seemed to be conflict issues when Kevin Martin was chairman of the FCC, between the FCC and Congress. What advice would you give to Congress in dealing with the FCC and vice versa?
Oh my. Well, transparency and openness is always a good thing, and when you try to I won't say withhold information, that's not fair. If you try to constrain the dissemination of information, again, it's not, over time, not productive. And I hope that we move an FCC reform bill. I tried to get Mr. Dingle and Mr. Markey interested in the last Congress to make the FCC statutorily more open. It's one of the few regulatory bodies that doesn't have to issue an agenda and when it's thinking about doing a rulemaking, they have this arcane process where they don't really have to circulate it for public approval. They just let each member of the commission look at it. So it's an interesting way of doing business. And my advice would be, be more open and transparent, and hopefully we can move a reform package through the Congress and have the President sign it. And then once the President's got his new commissioners in place, have them have an open link with the committees of jurisdiction and the leadership in the House and the Senate, so that we can have a very progressive telecommunications policy. Telecommunications is one of the few areas that the United States still leads the world in, and the way you transmit and manage and store information is more and more important in an internet worldwide web age, and we need to make sure we get it right here in this country. So FCC is one of the big commissions, in my opinion, that we need to to stay right on top of as a Congress.
Congressman Joe Barton is the ranking member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, and Veigle with Communications Daily. Thank you both for being on the Communicators.
Thank you.